It's the capability of a connected mind to see and feel its sense of synchronicity and alignment. In other words, if you are looking at things and you're receiving ideas which are more separated, that is a different state of awareness than when you look at things and you just know the connection. You know how everything's connected. You just understand that your knowing is like seeing a black and white bird fly right in front of you when you're talking about balance and the yin-yangs of life. You integrate your vision with all that you perceive, and it becomes a connected surprise where every second the reason you see coincidences is because your life energies, let us say, have excited towards a level where they are having a more profound unknown relationship with themselves. In other words, you're paying attention to the unknown more than the known, because when you pay attention to the known, you feel certain, you feel your beliefs are as fixed as every mistake in your life. But they're not. Beliefs are not made to make the idea of man too believable. We are a changing idea. We are changing physicality. There is a sense of transcendence in regards to our movement. But when we're stationary, all unity is perceived within the moment. When we begin to move, conception begins. When we begin to speak, duality and separation begins. It's as if the meal is brought to the table and you see there was a meal that would end eventually. But it doesn't matter. You look at the quality of your separations and no longer at the quantity, and you realize that the quality changes by your own vision of your problems in your life. And once you have that clear vision, you don't have the same level of consciousness because you're not at the same problems. In other words, if you answer some childhood problems which were never acknowledged in your childhood, then you begin to work with a clarity that is naturally present in life, and it's present anywhere we go, really. You see, our experiences are no longer limited to just the physical body. In other words, we're having experiences with the ideas that we create. In other words, our creativity is interacting with us as much as we're interacting with it, as much as we are manifesting a separation for it to be present. Therefore, beyond the white picket fence, there are stories that can never be written, that cannot be spoken. And I'm not saying this to create some form of allure. It is actually true. There are some things we cannot verbalize. We cannot give language to interpret. However, we can look at. There is no greater definition of death for, as long as there is the concept of death, the mental idea, the word is still alive. It does not tell you death. It tells you life, because it's formed. Death is supposed to be a formless. Remembrance. You see, you know how many times you have opened the door and you know how it feels like when you enter a room? Imagine that, but for greater life cycles. So in other words, imagine that you have walked this walk before. Don't imagine it actually. Don't have a shape or an idea or a time or a place. Just feel as if you've walked before. You know where you're walking, right? You see, you have to trust your own decision making. You have to trust your own flow of how logic brings you the illogical, because it's breaking its own barrier. We're always finding new ideas here. Go put a Japanese guy beside, let's say, a Middle Eastern guy, beside an American guy, and beside an English guy, and you don't get a joke, you get cultural globalization. You know, you understand methodologies, even though there is greed and all those guys are trying to fight for the same chair. But who is dictating the chair is never on the chair. Who is making the president is never the president. He's never formed. He understands a formless enemy is unseen. Therefore, it's a fear. Therefore, fear keeps man at bay because man uses his imagination to perceive a fearless outcome. But because there is fear, the world is defined based on incapability, and therefore you are not the best leader. You are not the one to speak. Some people believe there was only one Martin Luther King. There was only one Gandhi. There was only one person who could do it. Actually, no. It's a level of awareness that person attained, which he saw one of humanity's problems, Martin Luther King, and responded, similar to Gandhi. It's very beautiful, actually. Gandhi, I share this story with a lot of people, but it is said that before that moment that made Gandhi really Gandhi, he was sitting down. He was not engaged with logical sequencing of what his outline and his plan should be. He sat down until he feels the answer. He would always tell people, the answer will come to me. The answer will come to me. And it is very true. Because the answer does come to him, and he stands up, and nobody knows what he's doing, and he starts walking towards the beach, and he picks up the sand, not the sand, the salt that was illegal. Gosh, if they made the sand illegal, that'd be terrible. But they made the salt illegal, right? So he fought against salt, and non-violently. He didn't break down years and years of indoctrination to bring forth a new sense of freedom. He simply did. He understood action was more valuable than words. In other words, you can tell someone you can't, but if they do something, they've done it. So it could be anyone, actually. It could be even your own voice from the past telling you can't do something, and it's your choice. You choose the intensity of your next experience. You choose how intense it is. You see, I have my own spectrums of intensity, and it is the experiences I've had. And some of my experiences have been very self-reflective from the beginning, especially when my grandfather died at the age of 10. And I didn't know him well. It wasn't one of those close grandfather relationships where the grandson feels like his other dad is gone. You know, it's not his grander dad is gone, you know. It was one where I hadn't seen my grandfather because I was distracted by the noise of Canadian buses because I lived in Canada at the time. However, during his death, something unique happens to me, which I haven't really talked about to many people, aside just a few. That I try to cry. I see my grandfather has died. I don't know much about his personality, but I know his position, his place. He very much created half of my being, you know, by, you know, being part of my ancestry. However, I didn't know him. So I was more sad about death than my grandfather. I thought about death, and I actually went for a walk in the cemetery, and I realized I can't keep trying to cry. I didn't know him that well. It's as if I don't have an emotional attachment or a reaction to death or the death of someone else. It's as if like there isn't that many ideas. Why am I not crying? And why is my other cousin, who was always with my grandfather, crying? It's because of our attachment to our memories, which suggest experiences of a more profound sense of self with that person. In other words, when your father patted you on the back, that was a sense of self that was beyond the expected. It was an unexpected appreciation from someone you didn't expect, for example. Or something like that, whatever it is, whatever psychology is present based on your father relationship. Some people don't even have fathers, so they had to think about it on their own. But regardless, I walk around in the cemetery looking at all these different graves, and this is in Iran, so this is totally different cemetery style. It's more formal here. It's less formal there. But they do have very intense traditions of activities you do. Anyways, I walk in the cemetery and I see the different graves. I see the different names. And all I see is that when the physical presence is gone, all that remains is our imagination, is simply the name on a stone which we recreate based on our past experiences with that person. How would I feel that energies of my grandfather right then? And my mind hadn't been that aware then to really think of this. But pretty much the gist of my understanding was that I compared it to the leaf. I think I was 10 years old then. And I understood that the leaf can be amplified into any other temporal organic destruction of a being. In other words, death was autumn's gift and there was always spring. Therefore, I sprung into a sense of action where I recognized I was having this whole conversation as if the dynamite between all my reality tunnels, all the ideas of reality I had, were bursting, and those tunnels were no longer the same. Some of them closed, some of them were never tunnels. Vision became clearer when you try to see how you're envisioning things. And therefore, my walk ended with a very profound sense of being for myself, actually, no one else. Nobody heard my thought process. I was just thinking alone, walking, and I realized in silence I'm contemplating the internal noise in my head. Because if I'm speaking out loud, similar to now, I might not have that much awareness to my internal thought process. In other words, to hear the sound twice. But the second time it's not with your ears. You just know it's being said. It's an awareness, right? Therefore, self-awareness came to me. Thank you. And as someone held the door open based on their life experience and process, I realized any change can actually change you. You could look at Gandhi's story and your awareness can change. You can see how someone made a mistake and you no longer need to make that mistake. However, regardless, there's many positions in which the human idea processes itself through. There are many conditions. And it's funny because sometimes we're not that much more attentive to life when we're thinking about death. If you thought about death every day, and not that that's wrong, that's actually a catalyst, but if you thought about death and how you were going to die, you would realize you are imagining an ending that has not come. And therefore, you are bothering yourself based on outcomes that are not even present, but only considered to be present by your mind. Don't create hell for yourself. Don't even create a heaven. Don't have a sense of ambition and prosperity to a greater and vaster sense of being and capability, but do not create an image for it. You see, a lot of our mental distractions are because we're creating too solid images that are too solid, and simply there is a dysfunction there. It's dysfunctional to how life is communicating with itself. And this is kind of hard to say, because if the giant thinks if it was wrong to squish the ant, it probably won't, because it's not that real for him how valuable the ant is. If we are stepping on ants, if we're killing insects, it's because that reality is not valuable for us, right? However, similarly, where are the problems of mankind coming? Are there greater cycles of change that are inconsiderate to mankind's reality? You need to let everything experience life. You need to not create an idea. You need to even break the idea of someone trying to help. The biggest trap that people find themselves is to be a helper, but understanding that there was never any help. There was never any curriculum of how you become a better person. It was simply an attention to your life. And the answers found themselves in your eyes. I hope this has been helpful. Much blessings.